key building blocks of power, as I said before, size of population and wealth. For all you realists in the room, right, what you want to do when you want to assess, what the world looks like, look at individual countries, you just ask two questions. How many people do they have and how rich are they? The United States is a real gorilla for two reasons. It's got a lot of people and it's got a lot of wealth. When I was your age, China had a lot of people, but it did not have a lot of wealth. Therefore, it was not considered a great power. Back in the day, the Soviet Union had a lot of people and it had a lot of wealth. It was a great power. Right? Those are the two questions. You look at a country like Sweden, a country like Israel, these are countries that have a lot of wealth, but they don't have enough people to be great powers. Nobody would ever say Israel's a great power. Nobody would ever say Sweden is a great power. Just don't have enough people. Right? You've got to have a lot of people and a lot of wealth. United States. It is and will remain a remarkably powerful country. Here's the population figures. U.S. population, 2015, we have 322 million people. Probably today we have about 325 million. It's projected that we'll have somewhere around 389 million people in 2050. So we have a population that's growing. And with regard to our economy, one of the most vibrant economies in modern history, and it has its ups and downs for sure, but the American economy is not to be underestimated, as you know. Here are some of the key figures. This is China versus the United States. And remember, we're talking about looking at size of population and wealth. You've just seen the population figures for the United States, but I put them up there for purposes of comparison. There's the Chinese population. Today we have 325 million. Chinese population's probably around 1.39 billion. That's a huge difference. It's a huge difference. Even though the Chinese population decreases a bit by 2050, that's a consequence of the one-child policy. Right? They still have 1.35 billion people compared to our 389 billion people. What about wealth? If China today had Hong Kong's per capita GNI, it would have a GNI, that's gross national income, of $48.4 trillion. Compared with the U.S. gross national income of $15.1 trillion. All of this is a way of saying that if China becomes a giant Hong Kong, it would have 3 times the gross national income of the United States. 3 times. If China today had South Korea's per capita GNP, or GNI, right, it would have almost double the GNI, gross national income, of the United States. Just to drive this home, this is the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union had roughly the same size population. Same size population. The Soviet Union had at most 1/3 the wealth of the United States. At most, 1/3 the wealth. We're talking about a situation here where China in 2050 will have about 3.5 times as many people as the United States, and somewhere between 2 to 3 times as much wealth. Just think about that. Think about the United States in the Cold War. We had our hands full dealing with the Soviet Union. We had the same size population as the Soviet Union and 3 times the wealth. We're talking about a situation here where we're dealing with an adversary that has 3+ times as many people as we do and has, let's say, 2+ times as much wealth as we do. And we're taking them on 6,000 miles from the California coast to get into China's backyard from the California coast is 6,000 miles. Huge power projection problems, right? We're going to be doing everything we can to contain China. It is really going to be a tough task. Again, we're assuming here that China continues to rise economically. So the key question for the future is, can China rise peacefully? My answer is no. China can't rise peacefully. My argument is that China is going to try to dominate Asia the way the United States dominates the Western Hemisphere. I believe you can already see evidence of this. I believe they'd be crazy not to. I believe if Romania had a lot of people, a lot more people than it now has, and it had a lot of wealth, you'd try to dominate Europe. You'd be crazy not to. Looking at Romanian history, how many of you think it was a good thing that Romania has been weak relative to its neighbors? You think that was good? Or would you have rather run Romanian history again with the tables turned and Romania is by far the most powerful state in the region? This is not even an interesting question. The biggest problem you faced over centuries is that you're too weak. You want to be really powerful, and you want to dominate your region of the world, because then nobody else will threaten you. That's one of the luxuries of living in the United States. We are Godzilla. Do you think I go to bed at night worrying about Canada attacking us? Do you think I go to bed at night worrying about Guatemala attacking us? Of course I don't, because we're so powerful. Wouldn't you Romanians want to be in a similar situation here in Europe over time? Of course the answer is yes. Well, do you think the Chinese are different than the Americans or different than the Romanians? No, they're not. The Chinese talk about the period from the 1840s, late 1840s to the late 1940s, as the century of national humiliation. Why was it a century of national humiliation? Because they were weak. And the Japanese and the Americans and other Europeans and the Russians took advantage of them. They want to be really powerful. They want to be by far the most powerful state in Asia, and they want to push the Americans out of Asia. And I don't blame them one bit from a Chinese point of view. But then again, I don't represent a Chinese point of view. I represent an American point of view. And we Americans have no interest in letting them dominate Asia. Right? Nor did China's neighbors, for the most part. There's some exceptions like Laos and Cambodia, maybe Myanmar, who will be on China's side. But most of China's neighbors will be with the United States, and will go to great lengths to contain China. And the end result is that we'll have a security competition between China and the United States that's not altogether unlike the security competition we had between the Soviet Union and the United States during the Cold War. You blame the Soviets, by the way, for wanting to dominate Europe? You blame the Soviets for staying in Germany after World War II? After what happened to them? Right? The Soviet Union was definitely interested in dominating Europe. I don't blame the Soviets. It's the best way to survive. You think it made sense from a Soviet point of view, after defeating Germany in World War II, to go back home, let Germany reunite, and then we could have World War III, do it again? Remember, the Germans, World War I, Germans, World War II. Russia / the Soviet Union fought the Germans in 2 world wars. They wanted to make sure that there was no resurrection of German power, and that the Soviet Union was by far the most powerful state on the planet. This is the basic logic here. But again, the point I'm making to you when we're talking about China is that we're dealing with a country that has a lot of people and a lot of wealth. And for us, meaning the United States and our Asian allies, to contain China is really going to force us to work overtime. It's going to require a lot of resources.